We speak to Leith Van Onselen, Chief Economist at the NB Fund at NB Super. He's a man at macrobusiness.com.au with David Llewellyn-Smith, with whom we speak occasionally. He comes from a place we like to call the Treasury of Common Sense, and he is on the line. Mr. Van Onselen, I hope you're well.
I'm great, thanks. Luke, how about yourself?
I am just terrific, Leith. I'm very keen to jump into issues this week because there's a couple of pearlers doing the rounds that you've covered brilliantly at macrobusiness.com.au. Tell me about this unemployment rate, 4.1. It's no longer got a 3 in front of it. And it turned out in the Parliament that the Treasurer or someone thought, righto, we can't say unemployment's got a 3 in front of it. What we can do is we can take the average of our time in government and compare it to the average of the other mob in government. And that gave them, I think, 3.7 v 5 point something. But how serious is the increase to 4.1, and will it continue to get worse?
Yeah, I think it will continue to get worse. Look. To be quite frank, the January labour force data from the ABS was a complete shocker. So, look. The headline unemployment rate rose again to 4.1%. That was worse than what economists had expected, which was 4%, and also worse than the RBA's forecast. The underemployment rate, which is basically people who want more work, also rose higher. But the bigger concern here, Luke, is not so much the headline number, which is the one that we all look at. It was the fact that employment growth has completely stalled. So the number of jobs created over the past, in the 3 months to January, was only 10,200. And that's the softest pace of jobs growth since the Delta outbreak during the pandemic in 2021. And there's also been a big pivot from full-time jobs to part-time jobs. So basically, over the January quarter, we lost 41,000 full-time jobs and we gained 51,000 part-time jobs. And because of this, the number of hours worked across the economy has basically been falling for 6 straight months. And it's only 0.7% higher year on year, the year to January. So the reason why that's bad is because the working age populations grew by 2.9% over the year to January. So effectively, the hours worked has gone up 0.7%, but we've had a 2.9% rise in the working age population, primarily because of this high immigration. So what it basically means is Australia is just not creating enough jobs and hours to soak up the population. And according to Commonwealth Bank research, Australia needs to create 35,000 jobs per month just to keep the unemployment rate stable, given this very high population growth. So what it basically means is that, as we know, we're in a per capita recession, we've got high interest rates. Australia has basically no chance of creating 35,000 jobs on average per month, which basically means the unemployment rate is going to keep rising. And the only silver lining in this, Luke, is that the Reserve Bank's latest statement of monetary policy predicted that the unemployment rate would end the year at 4.3%. So it's only 2.2% higher than it was in January. And it's likely to be, in my view, closer to 5%, which means that the Reserve Bank's going to be forced to cut interest rates a lot quicker than anyone expects because the economy is weakening quicker. So that's the only silver lining if you're a mortgage holder.
Okay, so there's a lot to take in. I think I'm looking for a headline figure, and the headline figure I'm getting is we need to create 35,000 jobs per month. We couldn't even create 11,000 in the last quarter. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right, mate. That's spot on. So the reason why we need 35,000 jobs is twofold. Number one, and most importantly, is we're running a high immigration program. So effectively, the labour supply growth's grown very quick because so many people are coming into the country. And secondly, and this is less important, but it's a factor, all those extra babies we had during the baby bonus time of Peter Costello in the early 2000s, those people are now hitting adult working age. So they're also entering the labour market. So effectively, we've got this really strong record growth in labour supply, which basically needs jobs to ensure that we can soak them up. And if we don't create enough jobs, unemployment's going to rise. And that's effectively the sort of situation we find ourselves in.
Imagine if we find ourselves in high unemployment, 5% plus, and we have very high rents, and we have people reliant on public support. Gee, that changes the face of the country very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, so basically, look, in some ways, Australia's sort of facing a stagflationary period. So it's a bit different to the 1970s, obviously, but, we've got this period of sort of elevated inflation and really slow growth. And in this case, rising unemployment. And we're probably going to get also falling wage growth because Obviously, if your unemployment rate's going up and you got all these people who are competing for jobs and the jobs are becoming more scarce, you're going to get slower wage growth as well. So that also means lower household income growth. So, look, it's a really, it's a pretty poor situation. And again, I know I say it every week, but this super high immigration, turbocharged immigration program that the federal government's running is absolutely ridiculous because it's obviously pushing up rents, making housing a lot more expensive. At the same time, it's also pushing up labour supply super quickly, so which means that we're going to have much higher unemployment as well.
Of all the things, I mean, the government got another headache yesterday. No doubt you're aware that there's apparently a boatload or 30 asylum seekers that found their way to a place called Beagle Bay in Western Australia. So many issues wherever you look, whether it's defence, whatever. But and lots of people get angry or disappointed or frustrated for lots of reasons. But I won't move on from this. I can't move on from this. And it was a sham of the Jobs and Skills Summit. Hey, we need to get skilled people here. We need to build houses, blah, blah, blah. They get their meeting. Look at this. We're inclusive. We're having meetings. Even David Littleproud went along. And then, of course, we ramp up immigration to 600,000 or thereabouts. Out of the 600,000, we get 1,000 plumbers. But hang on, we need skills. We need to build homes. I mean, the whole thing has been a sham. It's big Australia. It's bigger profits. It's more customers. If there's ever been, I mean, everyone are entitled to give the government the benefit of the doubt, but they absolutely screwed this up deluxe with a cherry on top, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, there was no plan for this. So effectively, they just said, look, they obviously the Jobs and Skills Summit September 2022 was completely rigged. So it was rigged to drive big Australia. So effectively, what they did was they stacked the summit full of pro-immigration lobby groups, and then Claire O'Neill and Andrew Giles and Anthony Albanese all came out and said, hey, look, we've got this really strong consensus for immigration. It's amazing how much consensus there is. Everybody wants high immigration. Well, of course they did, because you stacked the lobby with, you didn't have me there. You didn't have other people who were sceptical. They just stacked it full of big Australia rent seekers. And of course, that's, 18 months down the track, we're living with the consequences. And there's never been any thought to how are we going to provide the infrastructure? How are we going to provide the houses? All the usual negative external impacts you get from this sort of stuff. They never think about that. Yeah. They always just, open up the fire hose and then worry about the consequences later. And that's just the Australian story, I'm afraid.
The New South Wales Productivity Commission found that 30 to 40-year-olds are leaving Sydney in big numbers due to unaffordable housing. Gee, that's a shock.
Yeah, shock horror, mate. Yeah. This was another one of these, sorts of reports you get from a government agency which doesn't mention the elephant in the room. So, earlier in the week, the New South Wales Productivity Commission released a report where they were very concerned about a brain drain in Sydney because unaffordable housing is forcing out a lot of 30 to 40-year-old age households. So what they worked out was over the last census period between 2016 and 2021, nearly 40,000 households of 30 to 40-year-olds left. And the reason why that's a problem is because they tend to be the most productive households, in terms of their work experience and how much they earn and that sort of thing. And of course, the New South Wales Productivity Commission's brainiac solution was, we need to upsize everything, build more apartments to house them and to solve the housing affordability problem. Conveniently, Luke, as always happens, they didn't bother mentioning the immigration elephant in the room. So, last financial year, New South Wales added 176,000 net overseas migrants, and that drove population growth of 174,000 for the state. So all the New South Wales population growth came from record levels of immigration. And also, more importantly, in the 10 years to 2023, which is the most recent data we've got, New South Wales added nearly 800,000 net overseas migrants, which was 85% of New South Wales' population growth. So shock horror, when you grow the population like a science experiment and you drive up house prices and rents through excessive demand, residents that are already here leave because they can't afford to live there anymore. And so if the New South Wales Productivity Commission was really worried about 30 to 40-year-old households leaving, maybe it would, as a recommendation, recommend the state government argue for lower levels of immigration, maybe. just maybe. But instead, they've tried to paint this as a supply issue, which is always what happens. Oh, we're not building enough homes. They never look at the demand side.
Yeah.
They never look at the fact that federal government is fire hosing in more people into Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, etc. Then we can build houses for or build infrastructure for, and that's creating a lot of problem, and it's driving people out because they can't afford to live there anymore. It's all very basic common sense, but they never bother to mention it.
It certainly is. Alan on the text says, Leith is gold.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that.
Good on you, Alan. Thanks,
always
Alan.
nice to hear.
Thanks, mate. Macrobusiness.com.au for the other listeners that wondered how to see or get more of Leith's work. Macrobusiness.com.au. Got to go, mate. Loved it to chat. Take care. Catch you in a week's time.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. See ya.
He's a star, Leith Van Onselen.